Morning Answer continues next on AM 560. The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So, as I understand it from Brotherly Love Spice's kid, who's, I think, still suspended from Barnard. Yeah. But she's getting by. I don't think we're on a starvation watch, even though she's homeless and she's not allowed to go into the cafeteria at Barnard. She doesn't have her access cards anymore.
She's homeless and hungry, Dan.
Yeah. But the good news is... the good news is she's in a community, as she described it on MSNBC, that's welcoming, that's collaborative, that's peaceful. Basically, in this encampment, they sit around and have s'mores and talk about, what it's like to be oppressed. And then there'll be some time for the death to Israel, death to America chants. But it's very it's very community oriented. Yeah. Although sometimes, in order to have a community, they have found, I don't know if they'll use this language. It could be triggering. You have to exclude others, and that includes the university. They excluded a management professor there. We've had him on the show, I believe. Shai Davidai, he's a professor there. He's Jewish, and he didn't like being denied access to campus to stage a peaceful counter-protest to the encampment.
Media in, is the university keeping the media out? This is the COO of the university. Are we not letting the media in? What? Can you back up, please? My card has been deactivated? Why? Can you back up, please? Wait. Everybody, my card has been deactivated. This is Cass Holloway, the COO. This is Gerald Lewis. They were in the meeting where I asked them if Hamas is a terror organization, and they couldn't say that it is a terrorist organization. Why? I'm a professor. Why can't I?
Shai,
No. Speak out loud so the media
Shai,
can hear.
we are willing to take you to the math lawn.
No, I am a professor here.
Alumnus. We have a
Whoa, everybody quiet. I am a professor here. I have every right to be everywhere on campus. You cannot let people that support Hamas on campus and me, a professor, not go on campus. Let me in now.
Well, no. And of course they did it. Guess why?
For his own safety.
Of course.
Because if it saves one life.
You got to protect everybody, keeping everybody safe. But I don't understand. Why would there be any fear for the professor's safety when this is a peaceful, loving, communal encampment? Strange.
Makes me sick that him and others have been locked out. And then they're locked out of in-person learning, might not have a graduation. And here's another, her name is Hagar, and she's in the International Jewish Studies program at Columbia.
It shouldn't be that we have to shut down classes and go virtual and force us to stay home and encourage Jewish students to stay home because the protesters have created an unsafe environment. It should be the other way around.
I don't understand. On the one hand, this is for your safety, and the other, it's totally peaceful. So which is it? Maybe some of the other instances that have been captured suggest why it's not exactly completely peaceful. Like this exchange between a Kafifad undergrad and a Jewish student, as these Jewish students were entering a building, and the one guy you'll hear was draped in an Israeli flag. So again, sort of a counter protest, which is perfectly within the lines, but you'll have to decide if the response to the pro-Hamas protester was within the lines.
Keep it moving, you Zionist bitch. Keep it moving, you Zionist bitch.
We are Hamas!
You're Hamas, wow. That's a good one. You're what? You're Hamas?
Yes, we're all Hamas, pig!
Long live Hamas!
Ugh, so unhinged.
We are all Hamas, you Zionist pig. So you're undergrads, I presume, at an Ivy League school, so you understand the implication of saying you're a member of a terrorist organization. So that's not exactly a thinly veiled threat, that is. And, you know, the clip we played yesterday perhaps is the most troubling, even more troubling than that hysterical ignoramus that you just heard.
What could be worse?
This was the cult-like atmosphere. And this is the repeat after me leadership in the encampment, a very autonomous zone, liberation zone oriented. The repeat after me when the encampment was threatened by a Jewish person or two.
Attention, everyone. Can I get everyone to form a human chain right here, please? We have Zionists that have entered the camp. Mic check! Repeat after me. We have Zionists. Who have entered the camp. We are going to create a human chain. Where I am standing. So that they do not pass this point. And infringe upon our privacy. And try to disrupt our community. Please join me in this chain.
Do you see how hostile this is? And you're asking me not to record?
Walk and take a step forward.
Yeah, I absolutely feel right now.
So that we can start to push them out of the camp. One step forward. Another step forward.
Do you feel threatened? Oh, you mean by this Children of the Corn routine in front of me? Yeah, I feel threatened.
A little bit, yeah. A little creepy.
Ben Appel is a Columbia University graduate. He's written for Newsweek, the Free Press, Unheard, and the Washington Examiner. His Substack is substack.com/@Ben Appel, APPEL. Ben, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, how are things? I know you're an alumnus at this point, but how are things on campus now? They keep extending the deadlines for the encampment to disband, don't they?
Yeah, I spent the last couple of days up there just to kind of see what was going on. I felt like I had to see it for myself. And late last night, the president had issued a deadline of midnight for the encampments to clear, and it didn't happen. She extended it to, at first it was 8 a.m. as far as reports were saying, and then I think now she has given them an additional 48 hours with additional, constraints, perhaps additional guidelines and so on. I think that the students wanted proof, perhaps in writing. This is according to Columbia Spectator, that there weren't going to be police or National Guard sent in. I'm not really sure what all the negotiations are, but the protesters have a really high list of demands.
Of course.
They want the university to meet before they leave.
Why wouldn't they? The university is properly deferential. I mean, you're not that far removed from being an undergrad at Columbia. So right. Does what is happening now surprise you?
No, not at all, really. It doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I graduated in 2020, May 2020. So 4 years ago, I wouldn't have thought, I wouldn't have been able to predict that in 4 years there's going to be an encampment of tents, on the South Lawn. But when I visit the school, none of it surprises me in terms of like how, I guess, radicalized a lot of these students have become, and just the general hostility towards Israel specifically, and the university's relationship with it. There's just, it's a really strong undercurrent that I noticed from my first week, or even before I began, even during orientation week, back in late 2016.
Well, what did you see back then? What were you hearing?
Well, it was so I was always a liberal Democrat. I always, and I kind of understood it as part of the Democratic platform that, we support Israel. And when I got onto campus and overheard other students talking, they were saying things like, oh, well, everybody knows that the progressive position is to be pro-Palestine and anti-Israel. And I realized, oh, wow, I have a lot of catching up to do. And then I started taking classes with, professors who were, virulently anti-Israel. And so just kind of picking this up as I went along, that's what I noticed.
NYU business professor suggested sort of this double standard of free speech and tolerance except for Jewish students. I think there's other exceptions, but this is the one that we're focused on right now. Has to do with the oppressor-oppressed indoctrination, orthodoxy that is present on campuses, including throughout the Ivy League, clearly, as well as TikTok and social media, but TikTok specifically, where he argued that pro-Palestinian videos, tributes, outnumber pro-Israel videos and tributes by like 58-1. Do you agree, or do you have other perspective on this radicalization that you witnessed in terms of how it came to be?
So it really is. I mean, it's a complex thing, and it affects everybody differently. I mean, there are a lot of students that are there that are still attempting to protest peacefully. A lot of but then of course there are nefarious actors within there, and then just outside the campus, just outside the gates, and this is like yards and yards away from the encampment, because the Morningside campus isn't very big, are protesters that are, some that might be affiliated with the university, but a lot that are not, that have shown up, that are really radical and that are chanting, pro-Hamas and burn Tel Aviv to the ground and things like that. So it's a complex thing, but the thing is that the ideology is you're right, it's actually pretty simple. It does come, everything is kind of filtered through this prism of oppressed versus oppressor, and there's this hierarchy, and whoever is lowest is correct or right or morally pure or good, and that's a really simple kind of reductive take, but it's really pretty accurate in terms of how it gets into these young folks' heads and primes them to just see everything through that lens.
But, it's one thing to see things through that lens, be convinced that this is the right and proper way to conceive the world. It's another thing to be completely unhinged and hysterical and borderline frothing at the mouth. That's not sort of a dispassionate philosophical framework. That is clearly engendered by real hatred. And I wonder what your perspective on that is. Where that vitriol comes from.
Vitriol, yeah. I mean, it is. Oh gosh. I mean, I guess maybe there's a contagious, contagion. There's a contagious element to it. There's a lot of, no one is. There's not really a lot of teaching about the values of empowerment and survival and lifting oneself up. It's very much about victimhood and how you're oppressed and accentuating that, and then kind of channeling that into a resentment and an anger. And I think that's where a lot of that comes from. So I think that's really attractive for a lot of young people, especially who are just uncomfortable and confused and don't know where they are in the world and what's happening, and they want meaning and they want connection and purpose. And so this is the outlet that it takes them, and it could be really positive, but this is a really negative way to channel it. But this is just a really continuation of what began in the late 60s at Columbia. I mean, we all grew up on this, from these generations. My generation, I'm a millennial, I'm 41 now. It's just romanticized view of the late 1960s and all of these radicals that came and protested and started these huge riots at the school, and then against the Vietnam War. And so there's such a strong desire from these young impressionable people to recapture that and to be able to relive that and replicate that. And that's what I see so much of what is going on currently.
This is so different. I mean, I look at this encampment, and there's the trans flag, the gay flag, and these really nice tents. Those are expensive tents. Do you have any idea or any rumblings of? I mean, no, seriously, because I camp, and there's got to be $200-300 a pop, and there's dozens of them. So
right.
who's funding all this?
That's a really good question. There have been speculations about that because a lot of the tents are the same. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of speculation about where a lot of the money comes from with these coalition groups, these student organizations. I don't know all of the details about the funding, but there have been people that have speculated, and perhaps people have proof. I have no idea that a lot of the funding comes from pretty nefarious people and actors and organizations. But yeah, there are. But I mean, again, you brought up a good point. These are really, many of these students come from ridiculously wealthy families, and like I wrote in my, short piece for the Spectator, it's like, why are they masked? Revolutionaries are typically proud. They kind of want themselves captured on camera and to get. But I think that a lot of these young folks are terrified. They still want to be able to have job prospects after they graduate. They're not sure which way the pendulum is going to swing. Their parents probably are also texting them and calling them and saying, if I catch you on video, if I catch you on,
Wear a COVID mask so we can't see you.
Thousands and thousands of dollars on their education. So there's a lot at stake here. And I mean, these students are paying a lot of money to go here. They could have chosen not to go here, but they did choose to go to Columbia and work their butts off. It's like a 4% acceptance rate. So,
would if you had to do it over again, would you go to Columbia, or alternatively, maybe you have a child, I don't know, but would you send your child there?
I never would send my kid there. I've never sent. I don't have kids, but I have friends with kids and family, and I would never do that. I did appreciate my experience there because of what I learned about this culture. So, and I did get a good education there. It's a research institution, so I did learn a lot. For me, I was a non-traditional student, so I had dropped out years ago and then went back to school, and they have a program there for continuing students where, non-traditional students can just be matriculated in with everybody. So I was in my 30s when I went, so I had a little bit more of a filter. I was grown up. I had real life experience, so I was able to kind of sift all of this insanity through a filter of, oh wow, that doesn't actually seem right. And then the longer that I was there, the more I realized that, oh, okay, I'm really lucky that I have critical thinking faculty, and that I can look at this from a more experienced perspective.
Ben Appel, Columbia University graduate. He's written for Newsweek, Free Press, Unheard, Washington Examiner. Get his musings at his Substack, substack.com/Ben Appel. Ben, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The future of medicine is here at QC Kinetics. QC is the nation's leader in the most exciting revolution in pain management we've seen in decades. Regenerative medicine. If you're tired of achy joints, if your joint